you know?
Well, let's put a bow on this, right? Let's just launch into it.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our wrap up of 2022.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about what we liked this year and a little bit of what we didn't like. Not, that we're going to belabor that because we don't like being negative here, but
I like being
there was
negative.
some. I don't like being negative. But there were some movies. This was a big year for movies, and some disappointments. And I don't think it's just being cynical about them. I think some of them really were a letdown, and I've got some reasons behind that. And
Head scratching.
there's other movies that were really
An enigma.
surprising that I didn't think I'd really enjoy, and I did.
Oh, what were those? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, but yeah, you saw Avatar 2. Sorry to go right into this. You saw Avatar 2.
Hmm.
And what I found shocking is every once in a while I get a little jealous of Brian because he gets to go see something for free. And it's usually any one of the new movies that just hit the theaters.
Hmm.
Uh, but you paid for Avatar 2,
Yeah.
which is the surprising thing, you know, because it's not that you saw it. That's not surprising. The surprising is that you paid for it.
I'm it's not that I paid for it that I'm surprised. It's that I wanted to go see it, and I don't know if it was like a little bit of FOMO or fear of missing out or whatever. But yeah, I just had an opportunity to go see it, and it was kind of in the middle of the day, so the theater wasn't going to be crowded, and when I had 3D glasses and the Dolby presentation and everything, it looked great. It sounded great. I just
Right.
could not for the life of me really care about what was going on. A lot of people were criticizing the original one for being Dances with Wolves in space, and I think this one felt even more like Dances with Wolves in a lot of ways, which I think probably the biggest criticism that I can level at it. And the first one kind of got a pass because it really advanced the technology and it was a spectacle like you'd never seen. So, it had a story that wasn't like this mind blowing thing, but it was really beautiful looking, right? I don't think this one got the same path. First of all, I think 2 years or 13 years is too long to sleep on a franchise.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be here. This movie doesn't need to be exist or doesn't need to exist. It's weird. Where every once in a while you'll have a movie that there is a long time in between when the first one or a sequel came out, you
Hmm.
know. But it's usually when something like that happens, it's because there's an immense demand for a return of that character. Like
Right.
the good news this week was that Dread 2 is actually happening. It's no longer rumors. Like Carl Urban has signed the Dread 2 contract. So there's a Dread 2 coming. That's
Hmm.
exciting, right? Because everyone's been saying, I love Dread, but I just want to see more of Dread. So now we get to see that because, the demand was there.
Hmm.
Who's demanding more Avatar? You know? Like,
It
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it
You know?
it made a lot of money, but they didn't strike while the iron was hot. And I'm pretty sure we're getting the third one regardless because it's already been shot. I don't think it's been finished, but I think it's already. I think they did the two of them back to back. I could be wrong about that. Um, but yeah, I don't think this one's going to get the same pass on the story because of having seen all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe between now and then. And
Yeah.
this level of spectacle, which really kills me to say because the craftsmanship absolutely was out of this world.
Right.
I think it's the best CG that's ever been achieved. I mean, that was really, really impressive. I just don't think that's enough for audiences anymore. So that's my hot take on it. I'm sorry if people out there really enjoyed it. Hey, Rocket. I just, man, did not need 3 hours of that.
Well, the argument has always been Avatar's okay, but the special effects were really good. Right? That's the only thing that's I feel like the reason why we talk about Avatar is because of that reason, right? Because
Hmm.
it is cemented in history as being like a monumental move forward in CG, for movies. But man, it's just like with what you have, it's really interesting that like James Cameron is known for doing this, known for pushing the boundary forward for movie making. And he's done it so many times, but it's like the interesting thing is a lot of those other movies had a pretty good story or an interesting story to tell, and then the cherry on top was how great everything looked. But now it's like the story's okay, but where the cherry on top is resting kind of on stuff that doesn't have a good foundation to it. So
Well,
that's
it's not the
unfortunate.
first time he's waited a long time to make a sequel because Aliens, I mean, he didn't make the original, but that was a long time. Not quite 10 years, but a long
Yeah, but I
time.
think that's a different
And
situation for sure, though.
well, and the same thing with Terminator 2. It was a long time between those, and he pushed the boundaries forward with, making the movie. But the story really had something to say, and it was different, and I just didn't feel that here. I don't know, it just
Yeah.
didn't work for me.
Do you think it's going to make $2 billion?
No,
No. You think it'll get close?
no.
Half?
I felt like it was going to go one of two ways. That it was either going to be the first $3 billion movie ever, or it was going to kind of peter out at like, you know, 500 million
500?
or something like that. And I feel like that's kind of what we're on track for.
You know, wouldn't it be really funny though? It'd kind of be funny if like because Avatar's a franchise now, because it's more than one. So you could easily say like, Avatar was the most grossing movie of all time, you know. But now when you come to franchises, it's like, do you think Avatar will break like the top 10 of highest grossing franchises of all time? They'd have to make a lot, right? I'm
Hmm.
asking a question. Yes, I'm asking something. Do you think
Hmm.
it'll get there?
I don't know. I don't know what the list is at. I know it's all populated with comic book movies now, and it's. I
No,
just
but I'm
saw a
saying like
breakdown
what
of.
I'm pointing out is it's not going to be a contender to be like anything memorable, you know. That's all. So it's just James Cameron is talking a lot of shit right now about how great his Avatar is, right? And it's going to be interesting to see if this is going to sour him on making more Avatar movies now that the droves didn't watch the movie 5 times a piece, and made him money hand over fist in his opening weekend. I don't know. I think people's excitement for it was mediocre. So, at best, average, minimum. Just it's a movie. It felt like it should have been like a spectacle, but we're just not there, you know? Like Godzilla was a spectacle. Or Independence Day was a spectacle. That movie was everywhere, but this one just I don't know. Maybe I'm disconnected. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's the same level. So,
Hmm. Or we've just had so much spectacle that it's not impressive for its own sake anymore.
well, yeah, I mean, I think that's it as well. The bar's been raised so high that it's like even if I mean, if Avatar 2 is not surpassing it, then what can you say about it other than it being okay? It has to surpass everything that like the MCU has done. Anyways, I don't know. I'm going on. I'm rambling. We got
Enough
another
about
episode. We
Avatar.
have to. Yeah, it's sorry.
So that's the most current thing. What do we like this year? Let's spin this into something positive.
Oh, I liked a lot. I like a lot of stuff. And surprise, well, what I found really interesting is that more than half of the movies that I really liked that I recommend to other people were Shudder exclusives. Shudder came out strong this year. So they've done a lot of stuff. I say they done, but I don't know if they actually make these movies or they just acquire them and distribute them, you know.
Hmm.
So I don't know if there's like a Shudder production studio. But anyways, they say that they're Shudder exclusive, so whatever. But yeah, a lot of them came from Shudder, half of them. So more than half.
Okay, so a lot of horror movies on your list.
Yeah. How
I've
about for
got
you?
um I actually didn't. Well, I guess one of them you could consider a horror movie,
Okay.
but
Which one's
not.
that?
Well,
What one?
let's not start with that since we've
Why
got a lot
not?
of horror to talk
We're
about.
talking about our favorite movies.
Yeah, I know. Let's break it up a
Yeah,
little
let's talk
bit.
about let's oh my god. Talk about your movie. What one was it?
The horror movie that I liked,
Yes.
Doctor Strange.
That's not really a horror movie, but it is a great movie.
Yeah, it's the first horror movie in the MCU. That's how they were billing it, and comparatively, it absolutely
I
is
guess. I don't
a
know.
horror movie. Comparatively, it's they're doing their version of a horror film. Yeah, I was really looking forward to that one, and I'm
Yeah, this
glad
was
it
one of my picks as well. Yeah, this was really awesome.
yeah, I'm glad it wasn't put off so long where because that kind of happened with a couple other movies on my list there where they were put off so long that I wasn't really excited to see them anymore. When I did, I liked them though. I got one that I'll save until later, but um, yeah, no, it was timely. It followed right on the heels of Spider-Man. The marketing was really kind of deceptive for that one, which I feel like Marvel's pretty good at getting away with that because sometimes when they market a movie one way and then it comes out, you just feel cheated. Whereas, Marvel's pretty good at getting you excited, making you think it's about this thing, but then so like the example here with Doctor Strange is that the previews really made it seem like this was all going to be about the fallout from No Way Home, you know, and we were about 6 months away from that. So there, you really wanted to see what was going on because Doctor Strange was a big part of that movie, and it was a little bit, but not really. It really
No.
opened up the multiverse concept and really wrapped up more of WandaVision than No Way Home. It just kind of used that as the come on because they knew that people were excited about that and it was coming hot on the heels. So I think if it had spent a longer time, like if they had drip fed that for 2 years, people might have felt cheated. But since it was within 6 months, it kind of fits into that episodic, you know, structure that the
Okay,
MCU is
I
really
guess
good
I'm
at
missing
doing.
it. Drip feeding what exactly?
Just the idea that, oh, you messed with the multiverse, Strange, and there's consequences for this. Like it was really ominous feeling, and we knew that that was a big part of Spider-Man: No Way Home. So if they'd have
Um,
kept harping on that, you would have felt more misdirected because they would have led you on for a longer period of time.
well, I mean, it must be how they're bringing the whole M or the not the MCU, but the X-Men into the MCU, right? Because this whole multi-dimensional, multi-rifts, multi-timeline thing is so prevalent with everything that's happening in Marvel, right? So, I mean, the like I just watched Loki, like the whole show yesterday,
Hmm.
right? And it's like, okay, so there's a third example of alternate realities happening in the MCU, you know? And what's interesting is like they've segmented all those three. They're like not connected really. No Way Home, Multitude of Madness, and Loki. But it's like, well, which one of these is going to bring Xavier's School for the Gifted into the MCU? you know. I just feel like this is how now it can't be a coincidence that there's three examples of m- parallel universes in the MCU now, you know.
Yeah, it's too bad you slept on
Oops,
Loki for so
sorry.
long because one of the things that one of the big
No,
Phase
it's
Four
I resent
criticisms
that
were
statement because I didn't like
you didn't like
sleep
it.
on it. I liked it. I didn't sleep on it. I am so tired of the amount of content that's coming out of Star Wars and Marvel. I'm just worn out.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I kind of feel the same way with like Andor right now, where everyone's saying how it's the greatest Star Wars thing ever. And I watched
Mhm.
about 4 episodes of it, and I do like it, but
It doesn't
I
get
had
any.
to put it on pause because we've had Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and just all this other stuff. It's exhausting. If
Yes,
Marvel's a really big offender of this now too, and I think part of the whole Disney restructuring is they're going to cut back on the amount of shows that they're producing.
I hope so. And I'm not saying it because they're not enjoyable. I so far have liked what I've liked half of what I've seen. I really didn't like WandaVision. I'm sorry, everyone. That soured me to moving forward. Falcon and Winter Soldier was no, it was okay. So far Loki is the shining gem in Marvel's small screen stuff going
Hmm.
on, Uh but it's so much. Like the reason why I say good is because it's for me, it's either I'm going to stop watching it altogether because it's too much content, or I can go back to watching it where it's not 50 hours of content every year just to maintain where I'm at in the storyline. That's too much. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Marvel. It's too much content, and you're overwhelming me to the point where I don't want to deal with it. I just don't want to deal with it, you know? So that's
Yeah, no,
that's why. That's why I say good.
I'm I'm right there with you. It does feel like a job at a certain point. I like this stuff, but you know, when you look at the entirety of Phase Four, right? Right
We're
now,
still in phase 4, by the way. By the way, we're still in phase 4. We
uh,
haven't left phase 4.
Wakanda was the end of it.
Oh, good. So still 60 hours of content when the other phases had like 10 each,
Well,
you know?
that's what I was gonna say is that we we've got the entire Infinity Saga's worth of content, and we haven't even gotten to the next Avengers movie.
Right.
But people were saying that Phase Four felt kind of directionless, and
Yeah.
I only disagree because Loki happened relatively early on in the TV boom after the start of Phase Four, and it wasn't like, oh, we've got our big bad guy yet, but okay, I see what they're doing with it now. And now that they've revealed the ending of 5 and 6 with Secret Wars, having coincidentally, I just read that story last year. Not It's not the '80s one. There was a second Secret Wars.
I don't know if we can be careful of spoilers. I have like a hard cutoff of knowing anything or everything up until Loki is fine, but I don't know anything beyond that.
Well, this is all
So,
speculation because I'm sure, like with Infinity War, that they're going to adapt it in a way that makes solving the problem the same way impossible, like they did with Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War. So anyway, it it sort of like unified the multiverse concept. It's nothing DC hasn't done a million times. It's nothing Marvel hasn't even done a bunch of times. It's okay. This has all gotten so overwrought. We have to kind of streamline it and hit the reset button. So I think once everything converges, that, like you were saying before, that's how we're going to wind up with the X-Men, and we'll kind of go back to basics a little bit. God, I hope so.
I I didn't even know that Miss Marvel had come out. That's where I'm at. It's too much. It's unmanageable. And they're like, "Hey, all these stories are intertwining with each other." It's like, "You sons of bitches." I gotta watch so much content. Uh, a YouTube channel might be prosperous if they could give me a cliff notes on every phase. Maybe that's how I'll consume my Marvel content at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of my picks too, going back to Multiverse of Madness. It was really good. Pretty happy with it.
Yeah. No, it was really good. And we watched both Spider-Man and that back to back the one night there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dude, this has been like a 4-month process of me getting caught up on the MCU. Still not there yet. That's too much content. One of my picks that I saw recently, actually, was The Green Knight. I actually had heard good things about it, but I picked it up on a Black Friday Best Buy sale. Um, my God, it's. I think this is like my favorite movie of this year. Um, which is really awesome because I feel like there's been I feel like I've been able to say that a lot this year. Like this is one of my top movies of the year. Like that, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Or this movie was really impressive. It's just they were not as big of movies. So yeah, The Green Knight is it's like takes place in the King Arthur times, right? It's a similar story. A lot of people are going to be familiar with a lot of the characters. But what I like about this fairy tale version is how it sets up the story. Um, I don't really. It's one of those things where I feel like I do say this a lot. Like I don't want to spoil things for people. I don't. I generally don't want that because watching a movie like this, it's nice to have that experience wash over you without you knowing anything about it,
Hmm.
without you knowing what's coming. As someone who's would experience it the first time through. Uh, but yeah, it was amazing. Visually stunning. The story was really interesting. I showed it to Andrew, and he's still been thinking about it. So yeah, it's definitely up there for me. Green Knight's amazing. So
And it's a medieval fantasy.
yeah, I mean, like King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table, but it's visually different from that, from what you're normally thinking, like the Richard Gere first Knight movie with Sean Connery and the romance with whatever. It's like The Notebook, but medieval, but this uh could be considered a horror movie. There's some pretty scary moments in this one, and terror. So uh but a really interesting story that you take with you.
Hmm.
You think about it. It's not an emotionally draining story, but it's just it's interesting. So I highly recommend that one.
Okay. One movie I was really surprised that I liked was Top Gun.
I don't think that why would that be surprising?
I just didn't need it at all. It's
Oh, it's surprising that it came out or surprising that you liked it.
I wasn't excited for it, and I really liked it. I just
Did they have
went and saw it.
volleyball? Was there
There
volleyball?
was football.
There wasn't volleyball.
Yeah, there was football.
Well, that's a
They were
bummer.
playing catch on the beach there.
There was a Top Gun video game that came out a long time ago, and one of the things I said was that I hope that you gain XP by playing volleyball on the beach against other pilots. Like you didn't gain XP from the missions, but you got XP from playing volleyball matches against other pilots. That's what I wanted.
They did a really good job in seizing on threads that I guess you didn't realize were kind of dangling
Okay.
and wrapping things up in a way. I think as it went on towards the ending, it started to feel a little like a Mission Impossible because the action was got a little ridiculous on a certain point, but No, it was cool, and it was a good movie to see in Atmos with the height speakers flying around. So
That's what I heard.
yeah, it was just a really good, solid experience. So
And now there's been a million TikToks or like reels of people starting up their shitty cars to like Top Gun theme songs now from that movie.
brought they're bringing it back.
Bringing it back. No, it's from the new one because apparently he's hitting all these switches everywhere, and it's like a camera turning and this not switch on and that switch on, and I don't know. I've
Hmm.
never seen the movie, so you've seen it though, right?
Yeah,
Is there a sequence where he hits a bunch of switches and then the
that,
movie starts?
that is every movie in a jet.
Okay,
Yeah, every movie in jets, where it's all about the gadgetry, and there was a big thing in this one where, like, looking around the cockpit, like they were really I mean, they're really playing up what you could do in a cockpit, because you're watching a person sitting there, like the
yeah,
background's moving by, and that's really interesting, but the person just kind of holding a control stick isn't interesting.
right.
So that was kind of neat to see, that they really thought about, like, okay, we've got the actors in this box. What can we do to hold the interest? Because it's not just going to be them, shouting at each other like, "It's over your wing! Get him! Shoot him!" Yeah, it was cool. I liked it a lot.
Nice. No, I wish I had seen it in the theaters, but once again, the main problem that I have with where I'm living currently is that the two theaters aren't very good. I saw Dune at one of these theaters, and there was like problems with the screens, and it didn't look very good. And it's kind of a bummer, right? That's always my argument,
Hmm.
is because it's like home entertainment's becoming so good, it's like better than some of the theaters now. It's like, well, why am I going to see it?
Yeah,
It kind of sucks,
they're
right?
just loud.
That yeah, and then you got like teenagers getting drunk off vodka and throwing up their popcorn in the back. I don't want that. Anyways, up next for me, it's a zombie movie. I've tried to describe it some other way, but it's a zombie movie, I guess. Because there isn't really another term for what these people turn into. But it's called The Sadness, and this is I think Korean. I think it's a Korean movie. But it's this crazy apocalyptic movie because the zombie thing, the reason why I can't necessarily call it that, but that's just the best term for it. But it's like a disease. Think of 28 Days Later, where it's like it's passed on through saliva or touch or something, or getting it in your eye or mucous membrane or something, whatever. That's how it's passed on. We've seen it all before. But what it does to you is so fucking scary, where it just turns people into like masochists and psychopaths and that type of thing. So instead of getting zombies, you get like serial killers, that sort of thing, and that's terrifying.
Hmm.
I watched it twice this year, and I'm pretty impressed with it. Yeah, the sadness is up there.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds interesting. So this is another one of these Shutter
Oh
movies.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Shutter had quite a few. The Sadness, Hellbender, um, those are two that are on my list. Like Hellbender's really good, but it's not a movie that I expected either. And this was like a COVID movie. Um, and it was shot with the family because of all the COVID restrictions. So they play a family, but they're a real family in real life. It's a story about witchcraft told in a really unique way, and like real witchcraft, not like The Craft, for example.
Hmm.
Don't hate me as I'm using that as a negative, because I do like that movie, but it's not a teenage witchcraft movie. Uh, that's also equal. And then another one, honorable mention that I had is What Josiah Saw, and these are all like Shutter exclusives and Shutter originals and everything. What Josiah Saw, I think I might have mentioned it before on this podcast. Um, I would say it's a horror movie, like The Shining is a horror movie, um, or like Jaws is. I think the horror elements in The Shining are more subdued, but it's still considered a horror movie. What Josiah Saw is that. It's also weird because there also isn't like that paranormal side. I think that if you have like certain amount of paranormal stuff in a movie, you can get away with not having a lot of gore and then still being called a horror movie. But this doesn't have that either. So it's borderline thriller, but there's some pretty creepy things that happen in the movie. And it's also a heavy movie. Uh Deals with like sexual assault and um other kind of perverted stuff. So that can be triggering to people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, some of
But what
that's
Josiah Saw is it's a movie, well, it's another one that sticks with you and you keep thinking about it. Um and it has a plot device that uses you know how like memories can't be used in court because they're what's the term that's used? But like memories are
subjective.
subjective. Yeah, but that's not the word that I'm thinking of. But memories are subjective, so you can't always trust them, and they're often wrong. And what I really liked about what Josiah Saw is it uses that as like a way to kind of cover up the truth throughout the movie or to like reveal it in a really interesting way. Like the how memories can be false is dissected in this movie to great extent, but also great effect and made a memorable movie. Yeah, so those are three from Shudder that are just, I think, really awesome. So yeah, The Sadness, Hellbender, and What Josiah Saw. If you have Shudder, you haven't watched any of those yet, highly recommend that.
I was disappointed in speaking of Shudder when Mad God finally came out, where because
What?
you mentioned about some of the stuff that's like you know triggering or whatever, and it wasn't so much that it was triggering so much as like what was happening was so
Disgusting,
foul that I just couldn't find
repulsive. Yeah.
entertainment or appreciate the artistry of what was going on. Um, I don't
Right.
know, man. That was a hard one to sit through.
I didn't sit through it. I got 15 minutes in, and that was enough for me. I didn't watch the rest of it. Like it is like a tour de force for the animation. If you know anything about how stop motion animation works, it's labor intensive. It's so difficult. You know that. Like you've done that stuff. I
Hmm.
shouldn't say tried because that sounds like you tried and failed, but you did it. You know how painstaking that stuff is. So there's a lot of respect that I can give Mad God.
Hmm.
But what I can't give it is any of my attention because it's so repulsive.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the rub, right? Is like you want to be able to watch something like this uh, out of respect for the time investment that must have been involved to create something like this.
Yeah. Well,
But
and
good
the
grief, is
animator
it?
behind it, Phil Tippett, is one of the uh, preeminent, just top of his field artists. I mean, Star
He's worked on
Wars,
tons. Yeah.
RoboCop, um, the list goes on.
Yes.
That one really hurts. Yeah, I really wished I could have appreciated that, but yeah, it just didn't work there. But
How would you describe the disgusting? How if you could put your thoughts of Mad God into one word, what would it be? Like the visual disgustingness is what I'm. How would you describe that to people? Maybe not one word, but it's like
see, that's too bad
the
because I
the
can do that with
the
Hellraiser.
the drain at a meat processing plant. That's about how I can describe Mad God.
Uh-huh. I'm
Just think of how disgusting that drain would be.
pretty sure they used some of that imagery too. Yeah. Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. It just kind of makes you feel skeevy. That's sort of how I feel about Hellraiser. Like we covered that in our Halloween marathon there, and I liked it better than I thought I would because I'm not much of a Hellraiser fan. I think the first one and the second one are good, but I feel like I need a shower afterwards, and yeah, and this new one definitely kind of made me feel that way too. But I'd put it up there as one of the better Hellraisers. But that's like we said in that episode, it's kind of a low part to clear.
Well, right, because it's like the first two, once again, like I don't know if I'd ever own them in my collection because
Hmm.
it's not necessarily like a movie I want to seek out and watch, right? But I totally agree that it's a good movie. And not just because it checks off the boxes of like what constitutes being a good movie, right?
Hmm.
But it's iconic. I mean, Doug Bradley as Pinhead will be like people will always know who that name is, so it's got a place in horror history for sure.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't like putting myself through that movie. Like,
Hmm.
it's that's uh but with this new one, I could rewatch the new one and probably not be affected like I think I have been with the first Hellraisers, like the first two. I could watch those again.
Hmm.
The point I was making also is that 1 and 2 to 3 and everything else is like a different mountain range that's way lower. Like it's like you're on Everest over here, and then like here's some hills at the community park over here. Like
Hmm.
which one looks more appealing? They're all Hellraiser movies, but this one's Everest over here, and you just got this 8-foot mound on a playground over here. Like that's
Yeah.
the difference. So one's yeah, one's really hard to climb, and the other ones I don't even know they're there. So you know,
Yeah.
I've watched them all too, and man, do 4 through whatever, I'll get a little fuzzy. I feel like I have seen all of them, but they also do feel like 3 movies, and there's like 9 of them in there.
Hmm.
So it's it's like the only movie franchise that just keeps making movies so they can keep the rights to make more Hellraiser movies.
That literally they were doing that.
Yeah, yeah. That's not hyperbole. It's like
Yeah.
that's the only franchise that does that. I think probably more, but it's like, why are you hanging on to Hellraiser? Like, who wants these?
Yeah.
Who's asking for more? Yeah, it was on my list as well. Hellraiser as an honorable mention
Oh, okay.
because I did really like it. It was up there as far as movies that I'd seen this year that I was like, that's pretty good. There were some other ones in there that I just don't think I'm gonna put on there, even though I did think that they were really good, you know, or
Yeah. It
good
was
enough.
it was one of
So,
the it was a surprise for sure, and I think Hulu's doing some really interesting things with movies right now,
hmm
and I'm not that's probably going to lead into one of your other favorite movies of the year.
yeah. Oh, of course, yes, because we're gonna be talking about Prey. I mean, when what I was worried about when I heard that Marvel of all places was going to be buying Fox, I was like, I think my fear kind of, but what I heard a lot of other people say as well was that like Disney was just going to shell these things. Because what 20th Century Fox is, what they have in their catalog is Predator, is Alien, is the Terminator movies.
Die
There's a lot
Hard.
under 20. Yeah, there's tons under Die Hard, or under Die Hard, under 20th Century Fox. That's like those are big properties, a lot of properties that people love to this day. And certainly for me, I love the Alien movies. So when a new Predator movie was coming out, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. It's like, wow, this is really interesting. This is awesome. And then it's called Prey. It's like, well, this sounds like it could be a shit show, to be quite honest with you. It sounds
Hmm.
like it could be awful. And it turned out to be one of the best Predator movies I've ever seen. Maybe even better for me than Predator. I just watched it again. This is number 4 for this year, this week. It's still so fucking good.
Your
You
fourth
know,
viewing.
my 4th viewing of Prey, yeah, since it came out. So it's just fantastic. It's it's very rare that we get a sequel that is on that level. You know, Alien to Aliens, Terminator to Terminator 2. It's on a short list um of sequels that are toe to toe with the original. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, no, it was good, and my fear with it going to Hulu was that it was going to be just kind of cheap or something like that, and it wasn't.
yeah.
I think Hulu's a great place to keep properties like this alive because it's going to put the reason they didn't put it out in the theater is because Predator's really never been that big of a moneymaker, and I think it makes sense for Alien to wind up on Hulu if they go that route as well. That's probably why they put Hellraiser there as well, is
Yeah.
because you can make a movie and have a release where it's just not gonna like there's gonna be more eyeballs on it than there would be if it got a theatrical release.
Oh, of course. I think it's perfect. I would love to see Hulu turn into like the 20th Century Fox house, where it's just 20th Century now. They dropped the Fox. Like what HBO Max is to Warner Brothers. You know? Like HBO Max is the place where you can see all the Warner Brothers content. So that's all the superhero movies, the Matrix movies, whatever. I wish that that's what happened with Hulu, where that's what they did with 20th Century Fox. It's like it's a funnel for 20th Century to just put all their content on. You know,
Hmm.
that's what I hope it is moving forward. I'm really impressed with Prey and Hellraiser, and if that's the level that you want to use moving forward, I'm so ecstatic if that's what it's going to be. Like that kind of like craftsmanship and thoughtfulness doesn't have to reinvent the wheel at all, but just give us quality content. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's and hey, Aliens out of Ridley Scott's hands now, so that's another one. So
It's a big movie. I'm surprised we didn't do an episode on, and this is my next one where movie I really liked this year was the Batman.
mm-hmm.
I don't think we've talked about this too much. What were your just general feelings on it?
Best Batman movie ever made. Yep,
It's it's
it is.
definitely top three for me. Um, 89, Dark Knight, the Batman, in no particular order. It's absolutely top three. I thought it was phenomenal. Um, it's so fascinating too how every time there's a Batman announcement about like who they're casting, the backlash is so massive, but then when people actually see the movie, that goes away, because like even with Ben Affleck, people were complaining to the moon and back. And then when Batman v Superman came out, even though people didn't like the portrayal and the fact that he was kind of, murder man, they still really, like, you know what? He was a good Batman. Like, it wasn't bad because of what Ben Affleck did. It was, the story
Yeah.
that they were trying to tell there. And it's
Well, it
just,
was. Yeah. Go ahead.
it's
Sorry.
just even back to Michael Keaton, when like really Beetlejuice is going to be Batman. Um, you could kind of copy paste some of those reviews like from '89 to the Batman were like, oh, this is really dark and it's too scary for kids. The main actor did a really good
Yeah.
job though.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, right? Like, because before I'm sure everyone had the same opinions that the social media mobs do today, right? But that's the difference, is like it's some punk film critic, in New York writing some bullshit about Beetlejuice, instead of now you got like 50 million people yelling the same thing, adding you on Twitter.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, the ideas are the same, but they just weren't as loud as they are now, or people to shout at weren't as accessible as they are now. Uh, I didn't have one negative view of Robert playing Batman one way or the other.
Hmm.
Um, I was proved wrong with Heath Ledger, and so I just shut the fuck up after that. I was like, I'll I'll see it when I see it. And if it's bad, I'll say it's bad. If it's good, I'll say it's good,
Yeah.
you know? So, because when The Dark Knight came out or was coming out, and I was like, Heath Ledger as the Joker. I mean, you have the hindsight of like seeing how great the Joker is now, but it's like, you mean the guy from 10 Things I Hate About You,
Hmm.
or A Knight's Tale?
The Patriot with Mel
Yeah,
Gibson.
yeah, that's the guy that's gonna play the Joker, and you're just kind of like, okay. But at the time, no one considered Heath Ledger as a serious actor. I'm sorry, they didn't. Like he turned into one in the couple years up to leading up to this movie and then his unfortunate passing. But it's like everyone kind of thought of him as just this guy who young women liked, kind of like a Josh Hartnett, but with long blonde hair, you
Hmm.
know. So that was kind of like the vibe that I felt. Uh, so I thought it was like pretty fair to levy that criticism against Heath Ledger at the time, because no one knew what he was capable of. So after that, I just am like, hey, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
you know um
Everyone had that knee-jerk reaction with Pattinson, because oh my God, Twilight. It's like, how many movies have been between Twilight and now? Like
well,
he's unrecognizable in
that's
terms
why
of.
I didn't have that pushback, is because I had seen him in other things that I liked, and I was
Yeah.
like, that Twilight to me is so long ago, where it was like that's what got him famous, but that's not what he's capable of now
Hmm.
you know so I'd seen him in other things. I guess that's maybe why I was already used to seeing Robert Pattinson in so many other things that weren't Twilight, where it was like Twilight wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
So I guess for people that's like, maybe the people that complain that, oh, the guy from Twilight, actually are Twilight fans, closeted Twilight fans.
It just became one of those popular things to parrot that you saw all over the
Yeah.
place, and like even young kids were saying that, where it's like, you've never seen those, have you? No.
Right.
Well, but you're over there like you're saying something. I don't know, whatever. Colin Farrell was really good in that too. Yeah, he was. I didn't even know that that was him until I heard that that was him, because he was so unrecognizable, the way he changed his voice and everything.
Oh yeah, it was really cool.
I think you have, for my money, the best Batmobile chase ever been put on film.
I wish it was excuse me. I wish it was longer, actually. It's pretty cool. I just wanted it like a minute longer. More highway. More Batmobile. You know what's really cool? The sound of the Batmobile is uh a very slowed down version of a bottle rocket.
Huh.
when it starts up.
when it's doing the nitro kind of.
Yeah, like charging your car, for lack of a better word. You
Yeah.
know, it's because it just sounds. It's in an alley, and it's just a baseful hum is just getting louder and louder and louder. But that is like a rock, the sound of a bottle rocket, like the zip sound, slowed down to like a minute, but it's really like 2 seconds of actual audio.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was really cool. Yeah, they wanted it to sound organic. That's why they didn't synthesize that basefulness. They wanted to use the sound and like bring it down so it sounded like there were imperfections in the rumbling of the Batmobile.
No, that is interesting.
Yeah.
I think the that was weirdly a movie that I was super super excited for, and then not at all excited for it, only because COVID happened and it was, you know, they had to figure out how to restart productions again, and it was delayed for over a year. So I feel like I lived with it for too long, and my enthusiasm was gone. But then when I did see it, like even going to see it, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm over it, you know. Um, but when I did see it, it was awesome. Just the
Yeah, and it was actually for the first time I felt one there was detecting in it, right? For a
hmm
Batman movie, there was actually not like pseudoscience where we're going to explode a bullet and somehow get a thumbprint from reconstructing the bullet from a brick that it explode. You know what I'm talking about,
yeah, oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know? And then but to have a story that is also Batman focused. Like this felt like it was a Batman story, not a Bruce Wayne who uses Batman to solve the problem. But this felt like this is a Batman problem and Bruce Wayne is kind of in the movie. You know?
hmm
Like the focus was so much on Batman in like as Batman. I thought that was awesome that they actually did that. Cuz like you could count in all the other Batman movies how much screen time Batman actually has, and it's usually not that long. It's usually a small, very small percentage. And I feel like we saw Batman almost all the time in this movie, you know? It's like here's Batman, here's Batman, here's Batman.
yeah,
I really enjoyed that shift of focus from being a Bruce Wayne and Batman as and then kind of getting in his Batman gear. No, this is a Batman story. I thought
yeah.
that was awesome.
Well, and that was one of the things that makes his portrayal different, is because he's uncomfortable being Bruce Wayne because he really is Batman.
Yeah.
Instead of
No, it's awesome.
we're just moonlighting. Um, Overall, I am getting a little tired of over 2.5, 3 hour movies kind of being the new norm.
Really?
Just have you noticed that? It's
Yeah, I have because I'm here for it. Like I want it. I'm the opposite. I'm tired of these like shorter 2 hour movies.
yeah, I mean, I get why they do it, because it feels, you want it to feel larger than life and epic.
Yes.
The only thing though, and maybe this is just me being cranky, is I feel like it makes the movie less rewatchable, because when I sit down to watch a movie, I don't have the TV going in the background. It's like I sit there the whole time I'm watching the movie, and I just don't feel like everything needs to be 3 hours long like Avatar 2.
I don't think movies need to be a certain length, but I don't think we need to hold them to lengths either, right? Obviously, you can get into excessive territory like with Return of the King, you know. But I think if a movie needs to be 2 hours and 40 minutes and they make the story like the story makes it so it has to be that long,
hmm
that's fine. But if it can be done in an hour and 40 minutes, that's fine too. Um, I'd rather see this like kind of fluid decision making on runtimes be the norm than, you know, how it used to be, where we need to have a movie, or directors were told that they needed to have a movie that was 2 hours or less, and then you have things like the true ending to Abyss getting cut out. You know, I'd
Hmm.
rather have the fluidity and runtimes rather than what happened with the Abyss. You know,
Oh
so
yeah, sure. When it
that's
deserves it, it absolutely deserves it.
yeah,
And a movie should be as long as it needs to be to tell its story. I agree with all that. It's just a trend that I've kind of noticed, and maybe part of it is because there's always like a buzz line, right, where it's like, this is the longest movie in this series by 5 minutes. Like that's a news story for people, you know.
yeah.
That's
I can understand.
just dumb.
It can be pretentious too, and you kind of see that, like, you know, like the last Harry Potter book was split into two movies, you know, and you could easily argue that the reason why they did that was to milk the property for one more movie, right? I will say that like Deathly Hallows is like the thickest book of the Harry Potter series. It's kind of understandable that they would need to go the two movie route to wrap up everything and to not have people pissed off, right? Like everyone got their proper goodbye, everything was tied up nicely, you know, there wasn't loose ends, or people weren't like, "Hey, that's I wanted more of that," you know?
Hmm.
But then when it happened to like everything, it's like, okay, well now you are actually milking it, where it's like mocking or the catching fire at Katniss Everdeen. I don't even remember. Like,
Hunger Games.
yes, I give myself for tribute or whatever they say. That was turned into two movies, and it's like, okay. Twilight was turned into two movies for its final movie. You know, Divergent said that they were going to do that, but never got to the second part of the last movie. You know, so yeah, they don't have a conclusion to their story because they ran out of money and no one wanted to finish it. So,
That's funny.
anyways, um, I lost my train of thought. Where was I?
What, do you have more on your list?
Well, I've got. So, I mean, we've gone back and forth on a lot. I do have like a couple more, but no, I don't need to share them. How about
Yeah.
you?
I don't know. I've got a lot of movies that I liked that I saw, like they're not new movies, but I saw them this year for the first time.
Sure. What do you got?
Oh, like Fright Night 2011 with Anton Yelchin, Colin Farrell. That was another one I just put off for forever, and when I did finally get around to watching it, it's like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big year for movies. I mean, it really felt like, the movies are back after this kind of like, the machine really ground to a halt because of COVID and
Yeah.
theaters were shutting down, productions were shutting down. It was a big year for horror too. I mean, you got all the movies that you mentioned, and then you've got. I think it's wild that we had a Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Hellraiser all in the same year. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
we're back in the '80s again or something.
Right. And depending on who you talk to, like me or anyone else, like three or two of those movies are really good. You know,
Hmm.
talk to
Yeah,
me. I like them all.
your mileage may. Oh, and a Scream. I almost forgot Scream. Yeah,
Was
four
Scream this year?
massive. It was. Yeah, and just over a year they're doing another one already. So that's,
Sans Nev Campbell. So
yeah,
no Nev
that's
Campbell.
fine.
God, you know, I hate to say this. I probably will wait till it's on demand to see the next Scream movie. Oh, it's just, it's
Oh, it was down to like $6 already, and it's like
we're da-
$4
we're
to rent it. So it's like, yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Well, we're just going around the same block again. You know, who's the killer this time? What other family member wants to kill Sydney? I don't know. Like, well, everyone line up. We got a family member of the Prescotts to kill. I don't know.
They really wronged some people. It's I
Man,
don't know.
places
It
I'd
it
never
was
go
it
to
was
visit.
better than I would have expected. But Scream 4
It's
is better than I would have expected too. I was just kind of bummed that that was supposed to be like the passing of the torch to a new cast, and it really wasn't. And we so long had passed that we kind of had to do another reboot with a new cast, but they're
but
they're back and
it,
they're moving on, so maybe we can move on past the Sydney angle. I've got a feeling Courtney Cox isn't going to survive. Just
it's just gonna be like every one of the main characters gets killed in one of their own movies until there's no more main characters left.
I mean, how many times can this happen to the same people and you still make it
That
through?
it can happen 7 times.
Exactly
6?
7.
Yeah. Well, is this number 6?
And they're actually calling it Scream 6. It's in the title. It's just Scream again if you look at it, but
What
like
a
the
bunch of
Roman numerals are
assholes.
cut out.
What a bunch of assholes. Like, just called the other one Scream 5. What is your problem? Why did you call it Scream? If you were just going to call this one Scream 6.
Anyway, the whole point
I think
there.
I'm just a whodunit hater. That's the real truth that I've
Oh,
found out.
okay.
I didn't like what's that other one? Knives Out, and Scream was fine the first time, but it's all kind of diminishing
All right.
returns for
All
me
right.
because I know, you know.
Yeah, we've said it. Well, like I said, it's been a big year for movies. It's been a big
Yes.
year for horror.
Mm-hmm.
The future looks bright.
Yes.
Just for movies in general, I'm
Oh, okay.
excited about next year and excited to see what's to
Any
come
any movies you're excited about?
for next year.
Yeah.
Um, Evil Dead Rise.
I kind of forgot that was coming out next year, so thanks for making me excited again.
Yeah, I just read that they built an entire industrial kitchen so that they could manufacture enough blood constantly for
Good for them.
for filming it. Oh, geez. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's other stuff. I didn't make too big of a list. I wanted to focus more on 2022 and just really kind of reflect on what a big year it was.
It was. There was a lot of entertainment, man. I'm also happy to see, one of the things that I'm happiest about that I've noticed with like smaller streaming channels like Shudder, kind of like Hulu, even though that's owned by Disney, is I've been complaining a lot about um how there's not that smaller budgeted movie in the theater anymore. It's like we have blockbusters and that's it, and that kind of like mid-range finance, like a movie that's not a blockbuster movie but not a micro budget movie either,
Hmm.
it seems to finally found a home on like places like Shudder or Netflix. Like the streaming services it's like that's where you're finding those. So it's nice to like have that. Although you're not going to see those movies in the theater again, at least there's an outlet for those to continue to exist. Because I think that's where we see like a lot of the creativity come from, you know.
Hmm.
Uh and without it we'd be missing so much. So it's nice that like Shudder was really hitting it out of the park this year and generating a lot of content, or at the very least, just being a distributor for the content that was already made. So
Right.
it's nice to have that again,
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, and let's talk about the future of this podcast. We're not just wrapping up this episode. Might be wrapping this up kind of indefinitely,
Mm-hmm.
But you were much more eloquent when how you were talking about it. So
Oh,
I'll
you
let you
always
take the
accuse
torch.
me of being eloquent here, but
Yeah. Oh, I'm less thoughtful. I'm kind of like a sledgehammer on things, So
yeah, we're gonna take a little hiatus here and recharge your batteries, maybe retool the show. Well, we don't really know what the future looks like, but what I would say to the listeners is thank you for your support. And if you just started listening, there's over 100 of these. You can go. There's plenty of us talking on the record.
over 2
So
years, we've done a show every week for 2 years. Well, it's 100, and this is 134.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's out there. So that's a lot of content. You might not be able, and if you are, this is your first episode, there's a huge library of content that's audio only, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made some good ones and some not as good ones and some really good ones, so feel free to rifle on through there. And we'll still be out there on the social media, so drop us a line if you like what you hear. You can still get a hold of us.
Exactly. And Brian's working on new stuff. I'm not at liberty to say you can, but it's nice that you are working on something,
Mm-hmm.
So, which is awesome. We're still doing our stuff as always, I want to thank the listeners too. I mean, it's nice to have everyone along for this ride, like Brian said, the future is a little uncertain, but we are taking a hiatus. But I don't know. I didn't think that this podcast would take us to the roads that it has taken us to, We've been in contact with some really unique people and interesting stories that were told to us, and just interesting interviews that we've had with various people. And that's been an added benefit, to be in contact with some of these people.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
That's a plus. Perspectives, especially professionals in the profession that is responsible for what we talk about. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And made some other podcaster friends along the way.
Yeah. Shout out to obviously the horror dads, Sledgehammer Horror. They have helped us out. Yeah. I mean, horror dads were inspirational for getting this up off the ground. So big thanks to them, I guess. Even though they probably didn't really do anything, it was more of like, they were I don't want to say that they were supportive, but it wasn't like it's just like, oh, that's an idea of what can be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Inspiring like that. Anyways, I'm rambling because I don't know how to shut these things down when it could be our last one. I tend to make it awkward.
You're good at that.
Yep.
Hey, we've moved. That's how we've evolved, right? It used to be an awkward beginning. Now it's an awkward ending.
That's right. Yeah.
But that's fine. Keep keep checking the social media, and like I said, if you want to reach out to us, we are not hard to find. Thank you for listening. And
yes.
we'll see you when we see you.